He is correct, Hebrews chapter 11, and you want to pull your little ribbon bookmark through that one. Most of our time is going to be spent looking in Judges chapter number 6, so we're just going to launch out from here. Telling Pastor, got lucky enough to listening to the radio this morning, and I don't know how many of you like Tony Evans. I'm a Tony Evans fan, and so I'm listening to him, and which verse he's preaching on this morning while I listened to him? Hebrews 11:32. I was like, yeah, download, copy, paste. So I started listening to him. I had done a bunch of studies. Gave an introduction that I was just in love with. So I'm going to how that he started this, which I think is it's just so fitting, and I love the way that it encapsulates, what we've gone so far. So he says that the people so far that we've spoken of in Hebrews 11 are told to us to encourage us and to give us examples of how to make our daily operation a faith operation. The author of Hebrews goes on to name many of these different people: Abraham, Moses, Sarah. And he says these folks, that they saw the hand and the movement and the power and the presence of God, and they saw it by faith. And it made it clear in verse 6 of 11, without faith, that you won't see God, because faith requires you, because without faith, you do not please Him. The absence of faith is the absence of the manifest presence of God. In other words, you'll know He exists, but you won't necessarily experience His existence in your daily life. So what He wants you to and I to do is to begin to live our lives by faith. The meaning of faith, as we have looked at before, like God is telling the truth. Regardless of what He says, is to act like God is telling the truth. That's faith. He says this: faith is acting like it is so, even when it's not so, in order that it might be so, simply because God said so. So I heard that and I'm like, man, it's not original, but it's too good to not tell. Got to pass that stuff on, right? He says faith is verifiable. You don't have to guess if you're having it or not, because faith is measured by your feet and not by your feelings. I don't like that all day. I'd rather like to feel the faith. Show you know what I'm saying? But it's measured by our actions, by your walk, not your talk, not by your lips. Faith is verifiable reality that you can feel faith, but you can be full of faith because you're walking and moving in faith. Faith must always, check this out. This is great. Faith must always precede sight. Once you have sight, it is no longer faith. In Hebrews, it says, now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. If I had to ask you what was the difference between, give me the opposite: big, small, light, darkness. Love, hate. Faith, sight. Opposite of faith is sight. And you think about it, right? If I go somewhere, I go to the beach, or I go to, Disneyland, go to Carowinds, you know what? I was like, man, you guys should have seen this, right? And I began to tell you about it. You're now having to believe in what I said by faith, that I'm giving you the true story. I'm giving you action. I'm presenting it in a way that you can believe it, right? You just got to believe me. You have to have faith that what I'm telling you is true, right? But now the next weekend, if you go and you see it, you no longer need faith. Have you ever thought about this, that whenever we get to heaven, there will be no more faith? Why will you need it? Because you have the sight. That's what's got us there, is that faith. The opposite of faith is sight. What He's trying to do throughout this, and what we've been looking at for this whole time, This author has come in and he says, here's the thing about faith, here's what it is. For example, and he starts just numbering off people, just laying them off, right? Going through everybody. And he gets over to where we are, and verse number 32 is the one that we're going to be looking at. He's given all of these issues, all of these things. He said it has to be done by sight. And we so often limit ourselves by sight, right? We say, I'm not going to move unless I can see it. I'm not going to move unless I can see it. I'm not going to do that unless I see it, right? That's when we limit ourselves. Because God says, first you need to do something, then I'll give you the sight, right? How many times have we gone into something, been a part of something, and we're like, I don't know. I'm just going to be 100% totally heart open, vulnerable with you right now. When we come over here for the first time, there was no doubt in my mind this was where we was going to be. First time I walked on the grounds, I said, we coming here. We're going to be here. And no, we are. There's no doubt in my mind. It was, I don't know what's going to happen between here and, how it's all going to come about. We're going to be here. We're going to come together. This is where we're at, right? Couple little obstacles, a couple little things, happening and stuff. I remember talking to Sean. I was like, Sean, we're going to be, we're coming together. That's what we're going to be. And I got to be honest with you, sir. I'm not a big church guy. So just being straight, never really been in a big church. I like the intimacy that's found in a smaller church. I said, but I do know this. I've not been told to leave. So I'm going to stay where I'm at. Right? That was an act of faith on my part. I could have easily. It's like, no, I'm going to go to one that's a little bit closer to the house. There's plenty of little churches by the house. Right? And would have missed God by a mile. Would have missed him. Would have missed all the stuff that we've seen, all the stuff we've gone through, right? We look back and we have many of the same issues, and we'll see that all of these people did, all of these acts of faith, everything that they done, it was because of a challenge. God, I don't like challenges, man. I ain't down with them. I'd rather for something to just flow out and be good, right? Something happens, bike tears up, something happens, I know how to fix it. That's not a challenge. I don't need to worry about that. Right? I'm right now redoing, an older bike, rebuilding it. I've got YouTube pulled up all the time because I don't know what I'm doing. I got to trust what this person is telling me is right. And it's through those challenges where we grow. Once I watch it and I get it done, now I've got it. Now I've got that information. Now I've got that knowledge. But it's through the challenges. We want to look at the end result. We want to see on the other side of the Red Sea. We want to see the birth of that child. We want to get to the end of that as fast as possible. We want to land there. But that's just not the way God done it. God didn't say this is not, every one of us has got a different route. Every one of us has got a different path. Every one of us is going to go a different way, right? And talk about, I know we've heard this before, that sin is like an archery term, and it means to miss the mark. It said, your righteousness is not my righteousness. You have come short of the glory, right? You think about it like this, and because we look at it, we're like, well, this person is, and we're always measuring ourselves against each other, ain't we? I am. I'm always, somehow or another, I'm measuring myself against somebody else. On my job, I'm measuring against the guy beside me. I'm measuring against the guy who was before me. I'm always measuring, am I doing this good? Nobody's saying nothing, Sometimes it's kind of like the military. You have to take on the idea of like, well, if they're not telling me I'm doing bad, I must be doing okay. And we look around and we're like, well, he's more righteous. But we've all come short of the glory, right? If we were to stand up and every one of us had to stand up here and say, listen, from this point right here, you get the flat foot, one jump, and get to the back of the door. Well, none of us would be able to do it. Some would get further than others, but nobody would make it to the back, right? Helps put it in perspective that none of us are perfect. When we get that through our thick skulls, we can have grace for ourselves and for others. So we're looking at tonight, we're looking in Hebrews 11. I've got to be honest with you, that was fresh off the plate because that ain't in the nose nowhere. Chapter 11, verse 32. And it says, what shall I say? What more shall I say? For the time shall fail me to tell of Gideon, Barak, and Samson, Jephthah, David, Samuel, and of the prophets. And I'm just going to stop right there. I know that this thing goes on, and I was reading through this, and I really tried my best. I tried okay, I'm just going to try to hit these guys. I'm going to highlight some stuff in their life, and we're going to move on, right? Just couldn't do it. Couldn't do it. I was telling some guys earlier, I said, whenever I started reading about these guys, and I started reading about Gideon, I started thinking about it, and I started trying to make it real, trying to put myself in his shoes and all this stuff, and the notes just kept coming and just kept coming and just kept coming, and I started looking at these other guys, it's like, man, I ain't going to make it through them. You know, I said it'd be like me walking into Texas Roadhouse. Every plate, nobody in there, and every table in there got the double deuce ribeye, a baked potato and a salad. They say, Randall, you got to eat all this tonight. I'm not your guy. I can't help you there. I can get that one. There's too much meat in this verse for me to try to do it any justice. From what we notice is that all of these people had issues. All of these people had problems. All of these people faced challenges. And so oftentimes we believe that the problems that come into our lives are an indication of the absence of God's presence. You ever thought about that? Ever hit your mind? You're like, oh God, why is this tearing up? Why is this going? What have I been doing? We think it's an indication that we've messed up. We think that it's an indication that God has somehow left us on our own to do things on our own way, right? We look at the end and we find that seems to be a whole lot more month than there is money. We think then we get into traffic is so slow whenever I'm in a hurry. You ever notice that? How it just seems like it's just full. You're in a hurry. You got to be somewhere. You run late and traffic is slow. Run out of gas because you didn't stop to get gas whenever you should have. You know, those kind of things. Can I say this? I heard this. Can't remember the guy's name. And he said, lack of preparation is not an indicator of a demonic oppression. Hey, there it is. It landed. Think about that. Lack of preparation is not indicative of demonic oppression. We think whenever we get to the end of the month and there's not enough money that we're under demonic oppression. We give way too much credit to the devil. I mean, we just give way too much. And we must think that we're spiritual giants because every time we turn around, boy, the devil's just been all over me. Why? What are you doing? What am I doing? You know what I'm saying? I mean, we just, you know, for whatever reason, we don't do it. What if our eyes changed? What if instead of doing those things, what if instead of saying, boy, the devil's been all over me, what if instead we say, God is really trying to change me? God, that stabs the pride, though, don't it? Because if God's trying to change me, then that means I ain't got everything figured out. I don't like that. I don't really like that. I don't like nothing, you know what I'm saying? I want to be the one that's got the answers. God says, that's not how this is going to work, and I'm going to keep working this into you till you see it, right? In Judges chapter number 6, we're going to be looking at the story of Mr. Gideon here tonight. Found out a lot of wonderful things about Mr. Gideon that I can really appreciate and that I can understand. Now, most of us are familiar with Gideon as far as from the point of Gideon's the one that threw the fleece out, right? Said, God, I need to do just on this. God, he wakes up the next morning, wrung it out, filled up a bowl. He's like, okay, God, appreciate you doing that. Just so I know it's you, once again, let's make this just dry and water everywhere else. Wakes up in the morning, it does. He gets out and he goes and feeds the Midianites, right? Love that story. It's a great story, right? But there's a whole lot more. There's a whole lot to Gideon before we get to that. And once again, we kind of get to that point on where I want to be, I want to fleece it. I'm going to take that coat out, throw it out on the yard and be like, okay, God, in the morning, I want no do on that. Gotta wait, let's back up a little bit. Let's check Gideon's life and let's see how that he got here. It may surprise you in verse number 11 of chapter number 6. So up to this point, just to give a little background so that we can get an understanding, up to this point, it starts off in 6, and in chapter 6, verse 1, and it starts telling us that Israel had been disobedient. Okay, they'd worshiping, we're going to find out later, started worshiping some idols, right? God sends the Midianites out. and pretty much scatters them. They start running to the hills, and they start running off into caves and stuff, right? And they come in, and they just, every time Israel would plant something up, once it got ready and stuff, they'd come in, they'd take it all, right? So now they've been kicked out. Prophet comes along and says, you guys have messed up. Tried to tell you, and you wouldn't listen. You guys have messed up. That's why you're in captivity right now. That's why this is going on in your life. And you got to appreciate just the fact that that happens. Just the fact there's mercy and grace just in the fact that God stepped into their life and explained to them what was going on. They already knew, right? Don't you love it when God just does that? Is that not the grace of God? Don't you love that just tender hand of where somebody will get up here singing, somebody will get up here preaching, and it'll be something going on in your life, and it just stabs you in the heart. You're like, how did you do that? Ain't nobody up here know really what anybody's going through. We know what we're going through. I know what I'm going through. And I'm going to read through this, and I'm going to teach through this from my personality. And I just have to believe that the questions that I had, many others had. Sean, anybody else get up here? Chris or Robert, they get up here and they're going to talk about something totally different. Right? Just what speaks to them. So this is what's going on so far in Israel. Then you got this little old fella Gideon, right? According to his own testimony, in verse number 15, he says that he was the least of his house, right? So you got this little fella. He's out. He's threshing wheat in the winepress. In verse number 11 is where we start. It says, there came an angel of the Lord, sat under an oak, which was at Orpha, that pertained unto Joas the Abizarite. I'm sure that's not correct, how I said it. And his son Gideon threshed wheat by the winepress, look at this, to hide it from the Midianites. So brother's in the garage, right? There's stuff going on all over the place. And he's supposed to be doing a work outside, right? He's supposed to be shucking corn in the buckets outside. But instead what he done was he went and got all the corn and he took them into the basement and he's like, yeah. He's scared. Gideon was scared. That's why he was in there. He was terrified of being caught, terrified of being seen, was afraid that they was going to come take what he had, was afraid they were going to do something to him. And then verse 12. And the angel of the Lord appeared unto him and said unto him, the Lord is with thee, thou mighty man of valor. I mean, couldn't you hear? I mean, wouldn't you think that he probably said it like that too? Thou mighty man of valor. Said it real deep and low like that. Gideon's like, what? I'm the only one down here. What, you know? But he comes back with what I believe to be the most honest, full, vulnerable, open reply that he could have. Look at 13. And Gideon said unto him, O my Lord, which is basically just to say, sir. He's like, sir, because we're going to find out here in a little bit, he does not know that this is the angel. He does not, this appears to be to him to just to be a man, right? He doesn't know that this is. So he says, Lord, if the Lord be with us, why then is all this befallen us? Who has not asked that question? God, if you be with me, God, if we're supposed to be here, God, if we're supposed to be doing that, God, I'm doing everything I know. Where are you at? Why is this happening? He even goes on. Where's his miracles, which our fathers told us of? Did not the Lord bring us up out of from Egypt? But now the Lord has forsaken and delivered us into the hands of the Midian. Wonderful. I mean, I read through that and I was like, yes. Thank you, Gideon, for acknowledging the elephant in the room. I can appreciate that. You know, Gideon wasn't a super spiritual man. I think Gideon was just being real. And Gideon was like, you say the Lord is called upon me, that the Lord has seen me, and you calling me a mighty man. Where is the Lord? I ain't seen him. I got to be honest with you. I've heard about him. I've heard about his miracles. I've heard about what he did in Egypt, but I'm looking around. I don't see him. Very strange reply in verse number 14. The Lord looked upon him and said, go in this thy might. Huh? And thou shalt save Israel from the hand of the Midianites. Have I not sent thee? I'm like, it seemed like a little bit of deflection there. I don't really see how you answered the question. You know, well, I'm asking, where's God? And you're talking about this is my might. I'm supposed to go in my might. I'm really kind of lost here as to what's going down. In 15, he said unto him, O my Lord, wherewith shall I save Israel? Behold, my family is poor in Manasseh, and I am the least in my father's house. He said unto him, If now I have found grace in thy sight, then show me a sign that thou talkest with me. Depart not thence, I pray thee. I come again, bring forth a present, and set it before thee. And he said, I will tarry and come. Gideon went. Just to paraphrase, just to kind of break this down. So basically what has happened now, so this angel has come on, said, you're a mighty man. He says, where's God? He's like, you're going to do some stuff in your own might. He's like, I'm not sure who you are, what you're saying. I don't understand anything about what's going on, but it's pretty cool that you know. I like what you're saying. Now, once again, Gideon believes this is just some dude that showed up. Remember, we're outside by the oak tree, right? So this could be just some dude just sitting there. And now this guy's just coming up telling him some crazy stuff, and he's not real sure what to do with it, right? So I'm thinking the same way. I was like, Gideon must have been like, you know what? I don't really know who you are. I like what you're saying. Let's get something to eat, right? Let's me and you. I'm down with it. Let's talk a little bit more about what's going on. So okay, I'll hang out. He's like, don't go nowhere, bro. I'm gonna go fix this. I'm gonna go fix this a plate. You stay right there. I'll hang out right here, man. You go get the stuff. Gideon goes, prepares this great feast, brings it back. And again, the angel of the Lord, this guy, he says, pour everything out on that rock right there and then pour the broth over the top of it. And he takes the staff and boom, just fire just consumes the entire thing. And in verse number 22, it says, and when Gideon perceived that he was an angel of the Lord. See, this is what causes me to believe, and I think backs this up. Gideon didn't know this was an angel. This was some dude that just showed up and starts talking smack, and he's not real sure if he's real or not, but he wants to find out if he's real. Whenever all of that food disappears off of that rock, then he knows it's real. It scares Gideon to death. Gideon says, oh my Lord, my God, for because I have seen the angel of the Lord face to face. See, Gideon thought he was going to die. Up to this point where we find out, no man has seen God face to face. Nobody can see me unless he dies. So he thinks he's going to die. And the Lord said unto him, peace be unto thee, fear not, thou shalt not die. Great, great, wonderful verse. He's like, hey, Gideon, bro, calm down. So what we have here, as I was looking through this and I was thinking about, and as I was going back over everything, this is God's gracious confirmation, taking Gideon from a coward to a commander. From a coward to a commander. It's confirmation. So we get first in verse number 17 is the first time he says, show me a sign. You might even be able to say that Gideon was the show me guy. I need to see. Show me. Right? God deals with him in a wonderful, gracious way. God says, peace be unto you. 24, he calls the place Jehovah Shalom. The Lord is peace. 25 to 26 says, came to pass that night. So now basically what has happened, so this is just during the day, right? This has all happened. Gideon's had this great revelation. He's seen this great mighty work of God. And then along that night, here comes God and he says, Gideon, I'm going to need you to do something for me. He's like, you see, you know where them idols are, right up on the hill. You know where the groves are. I'm going to need you to take them down. There's some stuff that's come up within the hearts of the children of Israel. This is a place that they're going to worship. And I need you to get them down. Now, he goes out and he gets 10 guys, right? And he says, and he does it by night. In verse number 27 it says he took 10 men, and at the bottom of it said he was scared of them, so that he did it by night, right? Now think about this. Gideon, everybody around knows Gideon, okay? Or they don't know Gideon because he's the least, whichever way you want to go with it. But he just says, and here's some stuff where I'm like, man, this is, huh? Because he's already said in verse number 15, he said, my family is poor. But then in verse number 27, it says, 10 men of his servants. How poor of a brother was you? I mean, you got 10 servants? Is that poor from where you are? You know, I mean, I've been to Texas, and I'm fully convinced that unless you own 1,000 acres of land, you can't even vote down there, you know. I mean, it's insane that the property that's down there and the people that's got, you know, the ranches and stuff that's down there. So I'm reading and I'm like, man, what? You just took 10, which would cause me to believe there must be more than that, and you're part of the poor group. Well, bless your heart, you know. I hate it for you. And I'm thinking about this, man, and I'm like, how many times do we do that even stuff whenever God's telling me to do something? He's saying, Randall, I need you to drop a 20 here. I need you to give a help here. I need you to pay for the groceries behind. I need you to pay for the gas for the person behind you. I need you to do this. And I'm like, Lord, I'm poor. I'm poor. I can't do that. Honey, get 3 more packs of that meat for us. I thought, man, a lot. But even whenever he knew, I don't know, I'm not trying to say that Gideon was lying. I'm trying to say he wasn't. All I'm trying to say is God knew every part of that. And God still used this man, knowing that his heart wasn't completely sold out yet, knowing that he was still kind of tiptoeing, knowing he was still kind of holding some stuff in the background, you know, just for worst case scenario kind of thing, right? But at any rate, so he goes out and he gets 10 men. They go through, they tear the groves down, get up the next morning. I'm sure, you know, Gideon's like, he's like this. I've heard from God. I've seen God. He didn't kill me. He gave me something to do. Bro, let's get the guys together. We're going to take this stuff out. I'm really scared right now because I'm afraid of how it's going to end up. So we're going to take this stuff down. All right? Goes back home. Next morning. Joash, where that boy yours? We know he the one that did it. And I'm thinking, and then as I'm going through this, I'm like, well, how do you know? What would make you think it was Gideon? He leased. He's hiding. He's scared. Why you think it was him? Now, when you go back and you think about it, so I'm like, okay, I'm trying to put all the puzzles together. I'm thinking it had to be one of the 10. How else does word get out? Somebody got loose-lipped. Somebody started going out and be like, oh, let me tell you what he did. Yep, you know, someone, you know, one of them other boys went back to the house, come in, clothes all nasty and dirty, you know, and stuff. And I said, where you been? You know, one of them might have got a little striping on the legs because they was lying and where they been. You remember? You know, I've been there. It's like, where you been? I am, you know, well, bend over. I mean, I used to have to do that. Mom said, grab your ankles. Boy, truth start coming in then, didn't it? I'll tell you exactly where we was. I don't know, somebody might have got a striping. And then the word got out about where it went to, right? And then the next morning, Joe, get that boy out here. I love Joash. Boy, Joash come to the door. And he said, what are y'all doing here? He said, that was all Baal stuff right there. He said, why are you contending for Baal? Why you going to plead for Baal? I said, let Baal plead for his own case, right? I think Joash was kind of like, listen, you might walk in, but you're limping out. The best thing you can do is take yourself back across the street and leave my boy alone. I like that about old Joash. Like that. Then when verse number 33, so we get to hear about the Midianites, the Amalekites, and the children of the east were gathered together and went over and pitched in the valley of Jezreel. Check this out. Probably one of the greatest things. When you find this in your Bible, circle, underline it, do whatever you got. But, isn't that great? Don't you love it? Whenever that happens, got the phone call from the doctor. But, boss man drawing me into his office and said he's going to lay me off. But, I got choked. You know, the buts. Don't you love it? Especially when it's but God. Hallelujah. The Spirit of God came upon Gideon and he blew the trumpet. Gideon blows the trumpet. This same little guy that was down threshing wheat, hiding from everybody, the Spirit of God comes on him because he's looking back now. Okay? He's looking back. Gideon don't know what's really about to happen. Gideon don't know how all this stuff. We know what's going to happen. Gideon don't know. Gideon's looking back. Gideon's thinking, I've talked to an angel. I've seen what happened. I talked to God. He told me to do something. I did it. He protected me. Spirit of God comes on me. It's time to fight, guys. First people that show up was from those of his own household. Right? He gathers them together. He said, we're getting the posse together. I need all y'all to come in, take off, go tell all the brothers, all the uncles, all the cousins, we fixing to go to war. Don't lead nobody. If they can ride, if they can carry a sword, if they can carry a knife, if they can sharpen a sword, if they can do anything, bring them. Because there's 135,000 troops on the other side. Get them all. Get everybody you can get. Now this part right here starts in verse number 36. This is where we get to the fleece thing, right? So Gideon's come up, blow the horn. He's like, get everybody together. All y'all go out, go get us some help. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, while they're gone, Gideon gets alone and gets honest. He gets by himself. He says, God, I'm scared. God, I ain't going to deny what you've done. I ain't going to deny what I've seen. Can't nobody deny no part of it. And my faith is small. I'm like that fella that you're going to write about later on in Mark. I believe, forgive thou my unbelief. He's like, Lord, I need you to show me something. So I'm going to throw this fleece out here. I need you to get it wet. The only thing that can get wet. Wake up the next morning, things so dead gum ringing wet, he can hardly carry it out to the bowl. He's like, oh, I'm so glad you answered that. I'm so glad you did that. But just to make sure that wasn't some sort of crazy little phenomenon or something like that, now let's flip it. Now make everything around wet and just this thing dry. And he knew what he was asking for, because he asked him, he's like, boy, I hope your anger's not hot against me. Please don't be hot against me. And he wakes up the next morning. Sure enough, God answered that prayer. Confirmed it again. God's gracious confirmation once again when he asked for it. Now see, we like that about the fleece, right? And I want to be able to do that about the fleece. I want to be able to, whenever I get up in the morning and I walk out to the truck, right? And it's still dark and the light is coming through from the street lamp and there's a spider web there. I want it to have my details in that spider web. I want it to be written out in that spider web so that I know for sure that was me and God. That was exactly what I'm supposed to do. Put it in like that, right? I want to have that kind of experience. I'm not facing 135,000 men. When Gideon first started, he wasn't facing 135,000. See, this thing about faith is, we want to end at how much faith that Paul had. We want to end with killing all the Midianites. We want to end with running them out. We want to end with these supernatural, wonderful acts. But faith is not this escalator, and it's not an elevator. Faith is steps. It's steps. And you have to be able to pass this first test, if you will, before you move on to the next step. And each time it's just a step, just an act of faith. Whatever God is asking you to do. It could be something simple. It could be something easy. We want to take everything that we do and weigh it against all of these examples that we've been given, don't we? Well, I'm never, there's not going to be no Red Sea. There ain't going to be none of these huge things. Not going to conquer all these people. Not going to be like David, That's not. That was for them in their time. That's what they were facing. Ours is different. What are you facing? Don't compare it to them and think, well, I'm less than because because I'm not facing this or conquering this. I'm not some sort of general that's going into Iraq, or I'm, not all those things. Your thing is your thing. And let it be your thing. And don't compare it and think because it's not as big as someone else's, or it's not as great or not as powerful, that it means that God is less involved in what you're doing. If He's speaking to you, He's involved in what you're doing. If He's asking you to do anything, He wants you to do it for your good and His glory. And so many times we seem to think that His glory does not equal my good. Why do we get it twisted like that? Why do we seem to think that, God, you want me to do this, to go here? Whatever it is, man, whatever it is. Yeah, I know this is going to bring you glory, God, but there ain't no way this could be for my good. Why? Why do we think that way? Why do I think that way? We get it all twisted. Get this ridiculous perception, man. Gideon got honest before God in chapter number 7. The enemy gathers around. Things didn't get easier. Let's show that picture. You got that? Can we pull that picture up, please? 135,000 guys. What we find is later on in chapter 8, verse number 10. So I was thinking, I was trying to put this into perspective, right? This is the big house, Michigan, right? This is the largest stadium in the United States, and it holds almost 108,000 people. That's just the seats. On a college roster for football, they can have up to 125 players. That's not, obviously what's on the field. It's just all the special teams, all the replacements, and then the replacements and the third and fourth string and all that kind of thing. They can have up to 125. So if you're looking at this, and on each side of that, there's 125, 125, that's 250 people against 108,000. And we ain't even at those odds yet that Gideon was at. So Gideon, we find out, we go forward, Gideon starts rounding all the people up, finds out. God comes to him and he says, listen, Gideon, he's like, I know how you folk are. I know how your people are. And they're crazy. And they're going to think that whatever happens, that they're going to be the ones that done it. We're going to have to cut these down. It's like, good to go, God. Let's do it. I don't think Gideon was really down with it, but what's he going to do? Right? So cut them down. Take out 10, 20,000. First thing, he's like, you tell everybody that's scared, go on back home. There was a whole bunch of them that was glad he asked that question. It was like, man, I got places I got to go. I'm ready to have see you, bro. And I mean, they're like that, out, looking at Gideon, rolling. And it come down, a few thousand more. And God says, you take them down here. And I'm trying to picture this in my mind. And so he separates, he said, bring them to the water. He said, every man that gets down like this, gives it that. He said, you got to back them out. You got to send them back. He said, but every man that gets down like this, he said, that's the one you want. Just checking character, right? Not that one thing was bad or one thing was worse. Didn't have nothing to do with that. It's just we're getting ready to take some fellas in that need to know right off the bat exactly what to do. Sometimes that's just how it is. Sometimes we just got to have counsel with some people that just right off the bat, I ain't really got time to tell you everything. I ain't really got time to go through all the stuff with you. I need somebody right now, right here in this point, and let's move forward. Right? Sometimes it's just got to be a quick rush like that. Drops them down to 300. 450 to 1 odds. Right? And we get another confirmation. It's so great. They're like grasshoppers. They're flooding the place. In verse number 9 of 7, it says, and it came to pass the same night that the Lord said, arise, get thee down unto the host, for I have delivered it unto thee. It's like, Gideon, take off, bro. But look at this. Look at verse number 10. But if thou fear to go down. Unbelievable, ain't it? I mean, it's like he's seen Gideon's up there. He's like, the odds ain't good for us right now. Got 32,000, gets 135, but I believe we can do it, fellas. God said, you're not going to take them. Okay, God, how many I got to lose? Here's what you got to do first. And he watches 2/3 of them go off. And like, this is not cool. This is not cool, God. He's like, well, you don't think that was cool. Watch what I'm about to do. You're fixing to lose a whole lot more of them, right? And Gideon's like, there ain't no way this is real. There ain't no way you're asking me to go over here. Do you see them? Do you see them? And you want me to take this group of guys and go 300? You go 300? You want me to do it with 300? He said, listen, you can't do it with 300. But me and you can do it with 300. This is the difference. This is the majority is God and the minority, right? If it's just you and God, you are the majority. You're standing on the promises of God. You're standing on the things of God. You are the majority. But he's so gracious because he knows that Gideon is still afraid. Gideon's still like this, knees knocking a little bit. He's like, okay, Gideon, I'm going to give you something else, bro. I'm going to confirm it to you again. I want you to take a walk down into the camp, get and listen to some stuff. Gideon goes down into the camp. He's like, come on, bro. Me and you, come on, Pooh. Me and you, we got to go. We're going down. They go down. First place they come up to, not like they sought for the one. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't like there was the red light on, here's where you come to, Gideon. You know, they come up to the tent and they just so happen to hear, hey man, I want to tell you about this dream that I had. So I had this dream that this loaf of bread rolls into this tent and completely destroys the tent. Just completely destroys the tent. And the guy that was with him said, that was nothing but the sword of Gideon. The sword of Gideon? You're talking about this little fellow that was throwing wheat? Is that who you're talking about? This guy? That's the sword of Gideon. Israel's going to be saved by him and God. And then Gideon hears that. And it says that he worshiped. Can you imagine what's going on in Gideon's heart when he steps out and he's, he can't holler because he's still in the enemy camp. You know what I'm saying? Brother don't want to give himself away, right? I mean, it was kind of in the inside, kind of takes off back, and he's like, load them up, mount up, fellas, here's what we're going to do. And this is where I get from coward to commander, okay? In chapter number 7, verse number 17, look at what he says. And he said unto them, look on me and do likewise. Behold, I'm come outside of the camp. It shall be that as I do, so shall ye do. From coward to commander. From the man that first said, it ain't me, I can't go, I'm the least, to, hey, y'all, follow me. And he steps off like that. All of that time because of what God had done in his life. All of the time because of each step that he took. All of that confirmation. All of those times where God was gracious to him. Tender, moving him, showing him, loving on him through each part of it. Not rebuking him, not coming against him, not saying, Gideon, you've seen this, Gideon, we've done this, Gideon, I've showed you this. Where is your faith? Why can you not? Why God keep telling you and telling you and telling you? And what God done, God said, okay, bro, I'm going to show you something else. Come on, buddy, I'm going to show you something else. Come on, man, I'm going to show you something else. How do you not trust that? How do you not follow that? How does that not make you just want to do so much more for him? We look on him, Gideon finally got it. He finally got it. He finally seen himself the way that God saw him. How hard is that for us? Why is that so much of our problem? Why do we get so caught up in the past? Why do we get so caught up in what she said, he said, the marriage that I left behind? I wasn't a good father. I was a terrible employee. I can't do nothing for God. Why do we so allow our past to dictate what God can do for us in the future or wants to do for us in the future? We got our sights messed up. I'm not walking by faith because we're walking by sight. Because we're seeing who we used to be. And God says, I ain't calling you that. Heard this story today and we'll end jumping back a little bit to Rahab, called the harlot, right? James chapter 2 did not call her a harlot. Said that she was justified. Said that she was righteous. Guy said that he's making out like he went up to heaven, right? He's like, you got that? Is Rahab the harlot here? And he was making out, you know, Peter over there with the iPad. Rahab. Yes, we have a Rahab, but this says righteous. I don't see a Rahab the harlot. I see a Rahab the righteous. Let us see that God has called us righteous. He has called you a saint. We look at her and say, I ain't no saint. God has called you a saint. Don't let your past dictate your future. Don't let your sight remove what God can do with your faith. Just like he did with Gideon. Let your faith move. It ain't going to follow your feelings. It's going to follow your feet. Let God work in you. Amen. Thank you, Pastor.